stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have no visitors wishing to speak and no written communication. We do have some special committee meetings to report on. Mrs. Goldbach?
Yes.
I'll let you start.
Yep, the policy committee met last week Wednesday, and you saw on your agenda and in the attachments that there are 5 revised policies and 3 new policies. We have a great process for the policies being reviewed by the appropriate administrators prior to coming to the committee. And then they also attend the committee meeting to discuss any questions the committee has. And so we've gone through and ensured that the revisions are all set. And then you'll have another chance to look at those 3 new policies before they're adopted. So I'm sure you all read them in detail. If you have any questions, certainly let us know. The Alternative Funding Committee also met. Show Us Your Stripes is coming up this Saturday. Lots of fun. We have tons of Chinese auction gift baskets to be raffled off, and the wine pull and food and drink and everything's all coming together real nice. So be sure to get your tickets. I know Jean has to sell some. Get your tickets from anybody before the event and be sure you're there. I also wanted to mention that I attended the ECASB annual leadership dinner, which was a couple weeks ago. And there was a speaker who talked about focusing on student achievement and talking about board evaluations, which we know a lot about already. So it was nice to be able to network with some of the other districts and folks who were there.
Great.
Maya?
You're up.
I went to the NISBA conference in Lake Placid this past weekend, and it was really well attended. There was a ton of people there,
Sold out, wasn't it?
and it was crazy. I don't know how they ever held an Olympics in that town because they couldn't fit NISBA. Seriously. But the annual business meeting was kind of the culmination of the 3 or 4 days. Some of the people I ran into, the board president from Williamsville, who had actually paid to go to the legal conference that was before that, which was exorbitant, but saved the district money. But the annual business meeting at the end, which was on Saturday, there's a quorum of 200 people. They said at the beginning, they were very adamant that everybody stay till the end, and there was a lot of controversy about what order the resolutions were in, but in the end, they said at the open of the meeting there was 222 people. They needed 200 for a quorum, but that wasn't really fair because they started it at 8 o'clock, and by 8:15 the place was full, but at 8 o'clock there was 222 people. But anyway, point of the story is everything passed. The financial report was strong. There's no debt. They actually had a lot of money, about $17 million. Membership is up, and they actually have a really interesting team of government relations professionals who go and really push these resolutions. And I felt like all the boards had done a really good job of digging through the resolutions and kind of talking through why they were voting for it or why they weren't voting for it, and they were very fair about the way they did that when the people got up to speak. So I was telling Paul earlier, it took an hour and a half to get through 8 resolutions, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be here until November. But then we whipped through a bunch in a row that really didn't need any discussion. They were kind of obvious, but there were certain things that needed to be discussed. There were several amendments proposed. None of those passed except for one, and all that was some wordsmithing on one of the resolutions, which in general was not recommended because we weren't legislating anything. Basically what the resolutions are, they're basically an idea that we give to their governmental relations people, and they then go and kind of push those ideas
Yeah.
to the governmental bodies who need to be working on it. And we aren't telling them how to word it, and we never would have that kind of power anyway, because it changes, you know, between midnight and 8 a.m. when it gets taken care of. We're not there. So anyway, let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, the one that was not recommended to be passed was number 31, and we had agreed with that. And basically, the reason they said that it was not recommended to be included was that it was already part of the old resolutions, but the people who recommended it wanted it to be moved up kind of on their priority list, and it was gonna sunset in 2 years anyway. So everyone felt it was important, so we all voted to renew it, and that way it doesn't sunset for 10 years. And then just if anybody's interested, I'm gonna actually forward the packets, like the important packets, to everybody on the board, the ones that I felt like were, you know, that I attended that I felt were worth looking at. But the effective board presentation was what we expected. It actually followed right along with the packet that Paul had given us, so I was prepared because I had my packet already, and I could kind of follow along. And that's the NYSBA tool. And right now, it does seem that that is the most, it's basically the only viable tool out there right now, so, but the
For
question
board
will be, yeah, right. Sorry if I didn't make that clear, but, so the idea would be either we do it ourselves or we hire the woman from NYSBA to come and facilitate for us. That's kind of, I think, where we're at right now, because I did run into Michael Horning at the expo, and while it sounds like they are going to beta something within the not too distant future, I don't think we want to wait till he's ready for that.
No,
So
it didn't sound like it was under development yet. So.
yeah, I think it is, but it's just not close enough for them to feel comfortable with beta, even a beta version yet.
Okay.
But I went to another presentation on poverty and homelessness and how it impacts students, and then, you know, based on their level of ACEs is what they call it, how it impacts them physiologically and how it impacts the school district in ways to help those children succeed and help the school district succeed, because if you're dealing with their issues, they're not then distracting everybody else in the classroom, and, you know, ways to, and then Mary Ellen Elia spoke. She spoke about the ESSA learning standards. She actually had a couple people stand up and yell at her. And she also had to answer questions about what is going to be done about opt-outs. There was a woman who stood up. She was from the middle of the state. She had 75% opt-outs. And yeah, and she said, what are we gonna do? You know, there's no way we're gonna be within the 5%, and, you know, how's that gonna happen? And basically, Marilyn, she walked through the changes that they have made. 2 days instead of 3 days for the testing, more time because they want to focus on comprehension, not the ability to speed read. The new tests starting in the spring have been written by teachers, and they got a round of applause for that. And the results will be turned faster if we get to the point where they're computer-based, so then the teachers can actually use the data, which is part of the issue right now. They don't feel like they get anything back from what their kids are doing. But, you know, she said, we're listening, we're doing what we can do. You need to go and communicate with the people in your district and explain to them that changes have been made, and that the new way that the tests are being used to work with teachers is not punitive, it's more developmental. And so there's been a shift in, they're hoping, I think, a shift in the way that the teachers view the testing, and then therefore the way that the parents and everyone else views the testing, so that they can get more kids in there. It's a federal mandate. This is not going to change, and so her suggestion to this woman was, we have tools on our website, we have everything you need to help you campaign for these people to not opt out. So And Advocacy 101, we're going to talk about that later. And I went to a special ed presentation. I went to a couple others too, but I won't bore you with it all.
That's great, thank you for going.
It was interesting.
For those of you who haven't been to it, so the way they know how many people are in the room or not in a room at any time is when you go in, all the doors are manned and they give you your voting paddle. And so they know by the number of paddles. And if you have to leave to go to the bathroom, you have to turn your paddle in and then you get it back when you go back in the room. So they always know what kind of head count they have in the room at any one time. So, do we have any other committee meetings? All right, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. First item in the superintendent's report is Dr. Schoenfeld and a secondary curriculum update with some of our curriculum team leaders.
It's always nice to be able to talk to the Board of Education of the great things that's happening in our district. You'll remember that last meeting we had the opportunity to hear from some of our elementary teacher leaders, and we talked about math, specifically ELA over at Windermere. Tonight we have some curriculum leaders at the high school level. These teachers are representing a multitude of teachers that have been part of this work that happens typically throughout the summer. Some of our other areas like science did do work, but it happened during opening days. So this is really talking specifically about summer work that occurred at the secondary level. We have three people. Mrs. Rapp will start with ELA, followed by Mr. Jones, and then Ms. Keppel. So if you want to come on up, we'll basically go through a similar presentation, and they'll talk specifically about each of their areas.
My name is Katie Rapp. I teach English at the high school. This is I think my third year presenting to you. This year I have to report we had 2 days in July, and in those 2 days we split into the high school kind of cohort group and the middle school teachers in the other group. The first day was mostly focused on Regents data. Discussion about it. We met with our BOCES facilitator liaison, Mary Jo Casilio, and we do that every year to take a look at different gap analysis, where the kids struggled, where they did well, and we use that data collectively. We take it back to members maybe who weren't there, in this case 11th grade, and then middle school 6 and 8 to 8 because they weren't there, in order to make meaningful changes to the current curriculum and focus on certain areas of need. That was really the whole first day. The second day, again, we split into middle school and high school groups. The middle school is in the middle of some major programming changes in the 6th grade and the 7th grade in particular. They have dropped a program called Read 180 and a program called Corrective Reading to be replaced with different tiered ELA labs and realignment of the ELA curriculum in those grades. So there was much discussion those couple days regarding that, and there's continued discussion regarding that. It's definitely a work in progress. There's a lot of moving parts to it. And they met then with Dr. Shanahan, who has been working with the 5th grade and is now also going to be working with the 6th grade continually, is my impression. While they were doing that, the high school, we were mostly 12th grade focused and E&L this particular summer. We've recently moved the 12th grade course from 2 semester courses, one being composition and the other being literature, into 1 full year course. And I believe I talked about that last fall when I was presenting this. A lot of thought went into that change, and so for the betterment of the students, that course it takes some time to reconfigure a course, and so we spent more time doing that. Oh, wait, what do I do here?
The buttons should be in there.
Oh, I thought I would just be perfect. Okay. Oh, I should have probably been advancing that, so I already summarized that. And I summarized part of this already. The second part of what the high school was focusing on are modifications in the current curriculum for ENL students, of which we are getting a increasing population. Actually, the most current data has us at 24 students in the high school, 25 at the middle school, but over 100 at Windermere Boulevard. So, you know, we have a high need. We have these kids coming into our schools, and we need to be ready to address language acquisition and vocabulary development and trying to get them to where they need to be. So I myself co-teach with an ENL teacher, and that's a big part of my day, just personally. So lastly, any future work is going to involve the topics I've already covered, including 5th and 6th grade alignment, continued work with Dr. Shanahan, continued modifications to the current curriculum in 6th and 7th grade in particular. In the high school, continued work with the ENL, 9 to 12. Hope for maybe some potential 12th grade electives, which we've always talked about and have always wanted. Perhaps, you know, movement there and other departmental development opportunities. And that's it.
Thanks, Kate.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. Great to see all of you again. Mr. Pinella, members of the board, thank you as always for your support. My name is Mark Jones. I teach history. Dr. Schoenfeld, I apologize. Thanks to you too, Mr. Pigeon. I teach history at the high school. Some of you I know, some of you are new faces. I'm glad we got the memo on pink. Mark Jones, nice to meet you. Mark Smith. Dr. Schoenfeld was real happy with my outfit selection. So at any rate, social studies this year, we kind of are keeping on. We're towards the end of the tunnel. We can almost see daylight. As you can see this year, we'll have the transition exam for the first time in Regents Global Studies. The format is going to sort of look the same as it used to, but we're expecting some changes in the multiple choice, and the big change this year is going to be its 10th grade curriculum only. So the dual exam of 9th and 10th grade Global Studies exam is out the window. Next year will be the whole new, the shebang, the brand new exam. So on day one, we took a look at what the transition exam might look like. We're still kind of playing a guessing game. We're waiting to see what the state's going to release here. We also continue to review and implement the standards, the new standards, the inquiry design model, and some of the changes we've already made thus far in grades 6 through 12. Day two, we were able to sort of get together and think about what historical skills are appropriate for which grade level. And it's great for the 6th and the 9th and 10th grade teachers, the 7th and 8th grade, the 11th grade teachers, and the 12th grade teachers to sort of, you know, chunk that out and see what's appropriate based on grade level. We also put a plan together where we're going to collect this year and really start to share out exemplars that are reflective of these new changes, things that the students are creating. And then on day three, we zeroed in on this new essay, which we're still kind of trying to wrap our heads around. It's called an Enduring Issues essay. Those of you who are at all familiar with global studies or U.S. history regions, you've probably heard the three most dreaded letters in history, D, B, and Q. It's sort of like a DBQ, but now they've taken some bits out of it and are expecting a little bit more on the kids as far as sort of linking the documents together, coming up with an enduring theme, and showing how this has happened, you know, played out over history. So what we did is we sort of broke this down and talked about maybe 10 or so Amherst-centric enduring issues, ones that we're going to hit upon in, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right on through, which was nice to sort of get a basis. Where are we? Outcomes. We're going to continue to create and implement these new multiple choice questions, these new constructed response questions, and this inquiry design model where we're creating the students sort of as history detectives, where they go out and they explain to us why, for example, I don't know, Peter the Great wasn't really great, where we used to sort of tell them why Peter the Great wasn't really great. Now the emphasis is sort of them doing the detective work. Grades 10 to 12 looks much the same. As you'll see in 6 through 9, we're really gearing up for the big changes starting this year and next. But same sorts of things. And future work. we really do appreciate the common time to plan and create and implement these things. We had 3 days this summer, which was great. We really look forward to see this new exam in June, this transition exam, review, discuss, and evaluate it. And, we're gearing up for final preparations for the big change in 2019 for global studies and the big change in US in 2020. So thank you very much.
I'll just wait till we're all done, then ask questions.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. There's one more with Matt.
Sorry, Jenny. There you go. Oh, man.
Hi, I'm Jenny Keppel. So this is my second year presenting with you as the math coordinator. So as you can take a look, we had kind of a crazy schedule going on. Each grade level and course pretty much met for 2 days each to be able to work their way through there, because with math, every subject is connected year to year to year. However, we do have to have individual goals for each of those different courses to make sure that we are doing what's best. All right, so day one, we all broke into our specific groups to work on some data analysis. So we were able to analyze how our action plans worked from last year to this year, and we were also able to create some new action plans on what would be better for us to continue to carry on and work on to continue strengthening our curriculum for the students. And then we, in that day one, we also were able to, we had some time, we were able to actually take our curriculum maps out, and we started actually doing those changes. To our curriculum maps, we were able to take some of our unit plans out and see exactly how we could piece together and put those action plans into use. So taking that data and really using it meaningfully. In days 2 through 5, that's where you kind of can look back at that schedule and see we had a lot of content groups that had predetermined common goals that we were working on, which were all identified prior to us getting together. I had emailed everyone, and we had talked with Dr. Schoenfeld about what we thought we really needed to do to enhance our different courses. All right, so in the middle school, so 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, they've now been in the rollout of their courses for about 5 years now. And they were really only worked for 1 day or possibly 2 days on their action plans. 8th grade, they knew that they needed to start increasing the rigor of their course. So they really worked pretty hard on finding different ways and technology to start bringing that in different ways and different systems that are out there that they could start working with. And then the AIS teachers, again, they work really well in the middle school with these individual plans to really help. They take all the data from all of the students that they're going to be working with, and they create a new plan every year on those students' needs. So that's what the middle school works on. In the high school, in our different content areas, algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. Algebra, we did our action plan. We are now in our 4th rollout. And what we have noticed is we have seen a big need in students coming in from outside of Amherst. They tend to be a lot of our struggling students. So we came up with the creation of a math high school entrance exam, because we have no data on those students that are coming in without that Common Core foundation. And we do see that there is a big difference when we get those students in the classroom and to not know what they need, that groundwork that they're lacking a little bit. This high school entrance exam is really helping us. We started implementing it a little bit this year, and next year hopefully every student that comes into Amherst will take this and will be able to gather at least a little bit of data to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, to be able to really help them out the best that we can. Geometry, we worked with data, and then we collaborated with our BOCES experts on some proactive ways to review, because that tends to be, that course, the exam is very tough. Data analysis is very difficult with that course because of the fact that every question covers more than just one standard. So we were working with BOCES on how we can best work on enhancing our program with some really good proactive reviews. Algebra 2, they're still in the beginning of their rollout, so they now have 2 years worth of data, so they were able to really dive deep into their data, and they also were able to start looking at some horizontal research of the exam to see how the state interprets the standards versus how they're interpreting the standards, and then they were able to modify their curriculum maps based off of that. Pre-calculus and calculus. So now this whole rollout is finally reaching these two subjects. So pre-calculus last year was the first year they had Common Core curriculum students in their class. They do not have a Common Core exam at the end of their course, so their data is really based off of their collection throughout the school year. So they were able to kind of make notes throughout the school year to see kind of from the past where they needed to make changes, because students are now coming in with this different groundwork and foundation. So they now need to fill in the gaps. And then calculus, they took a look at their curriculum maps. They took a look at then pre-calculus, algebra 2, and the trickle-down effect. They looked at all of those courses to see exactly how they needed to change their course to continue offering AP and the ECC accreditation, but yet still be in line with continuing the Common Core mindset. All right, and there we go. So future plans. Right now we are creating a high school math glossary, so that's something we started over the summer. We're carrying on throughout the school year, so that way we have, right now we are all using these different words and verbs and adjectives in math class, so we're trying to have this common language that we can share at grades 6 through 12. So we are all starting to do that. We are attending some conferences in November. A lot of the math teachers are going to be going to a conference that's right here in Buffalo, which is great. So that can help us. There's the conferences, I think there's over 200 mini breakout sessions, so teachers can kind of go and diversify and bring back a lot of different ideas. And then an important update is that our standards are getting modified and adjusted, so they will begin starting that rollout. They have been released, and they're going to start getting rolled out next year. So we will start seeing those changes. The state has not come out yet with the rollout of that program, how it's going to affect the grade levels, if it's going to start in kindergarten and roll out, or if it's going to be elementary, then middle or high, or if they're going to just say, hey, everybody go at once. We're hoping that's not going to happen, but we will wait and see what the state decides on that. So that is the high school.
And now's a good time for any questions.
I had a question for Mrs. Rapp or maybe Dr. Schoenfeld. You talked about the 6th grade, changes in the 6th grade English language arts. Is that more in the composition writing or more in the reading area? And you probably told us last year, but I'm sorry, I don't.
No, I definitely did not. This is new this year, and I think I'm going to let you take that one.
Yeah, it's more
complicated.
The easiest way maybe to explain that we have levels of readers and how we might support the students. So in 6th grade and 7th grade, you typically have a reading course and an English course. And then 8th grade, you have your English course only. We're looking at a change in a program that assisted our, I'll say, our lower tiered reading students. So that was a Read 180 type program. So that was a pull-out individual. Those students were not in heterogeneous grouping. It was more homogeneous, and they didn't have the role modeling. And the standards themselves, although it's a reading program, they never stepped towards, specifically, this is New York State standards for English. They were working specifically on reading, and it wasn't as connected. So there was a choice to back away from this program that, again, it might assist the student, but we weren't seeing data to show, once they go through this, they're golden and they're flying on their own. We were finding that we need to look at this differently and switch the configuration of our students. So some of the classes that might have lower level kids would have a mixture now with some additional support of staff to help them with their reading. So you would have the modeling, you would have, again, your focus would be on reading, but it would follow the Common Core standards in the way that they wouldn't go to 8th grade or be taking a 7th grade assessment and not have any experience doing it. If I said to you right now, hey, why don't you play the game of cricket? Let's all go outside and play cricket. You would understand it has a ball, it has a bat, but you probably wouldn't know how to do it well. So now we're creating an opportunity for them to learn. If you were to make an analogy of the game of cricket and reading, we're specifically teaching them the things they'll have to produce and show. It was sort of done in a vacuum, that it didn't lead them towards success in reading per se, because it was more isolated.
So
So
it's-
part of it is rescheduling
Yeah.
the students and allocating the supports.
I mean, in summary, there was two issues. Alignment to the standards and compliance with the law, quite frankly, or the regulations. So the program that we were using, Read 180, is a time-consuming program. It requires about 80 minutes a day, 90 minutes a day. So when that program was implemented under a previous administrator, basically what they did was they took the AIS period, which would be an extra period of ELA, and the original class for ELA or reading, and combined it into a back-to-back period, and they removed those kids from the direct initial instruction. And that's the piece that's a compliance issue. Quite frankly, the law says AIS services or academic intervention services need to be supplemental. They can't supplant the general ed instruction. So that was a pretty cut and dry piece. The second piece was the Read 180 program isn't directly aligned to the New York State standards. So the kids who are getting this program throughout the year would end up taking the state assessment, or eventually, as they move to high school, the Regents assessment, and they weren't getting instruction that was aligned to the standards. So it was time to evaluate those programs. They'd been in place for a few years, and in the end, it was decided that we needed to make sure all of our kids are getting direct initial instruction in the Common Core, or in the learning standards, New York State learning standards, and then anything that's required in terms of academic intervention services would be above and beyond that, so it would in fact be supplemental and not supplant the regular instruction.
That began this fall?
Well, that started last spring,
Last spring.
and for this fall, schedule-wise, one of the things you heard Mrs. Rapp talk about was they have also had some discussion with the fifth grade teachers now, and we're trying to expand the work of Dr. Lynn Shanahan from the University of Buffalo through to sixth grade, because sixth grade, under the standards in the state, is technically still elementary education, and it's the last time that we're required to provide 80 plus minutes of ELA and reading instruction. We currently provide that in 2 separate class periods because of our model. So there's a reading teacher and there's an ELA teacher, and what we're doing now is kind of looking at how we do that and looking at alignment and whether or not that needs to be revisited. So it's a topic that we'll probably explore for a majority of the year. Last Friday, the group met with Dr. Shanahan and representatives from the fifth grade, and they had some very good discussion about how things are done in fifth grade and how that transition from fifth to sixth goes, and it's been a productive conversation so far. And I know there's plans to follow up several times throughout the year.
I applaud your willingness to change and try something new.
And we're working with teachers and offering professional development. Some of that is colleagues working together and discussing it, and as we move along, and Principal Griesmer shared the same. We're working together on this, and we'll reevaluate it at the end of the year, and we're going to continue down the path to see the results that we're hopeful to see for our students in the long run.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I ask one more?
Oh, yes.
Global studies was,
Aye.
refresh us, last year, I know global studies used to be 9th grade, now
Yep.
it's 10th grade. It's more exploring, being detective.
Yeah, the 9th grade curriculum is still there, but the exam doesn't now hold the students accountable for that information, so we're still curious what that's going to look like, especially when we talk about history. I mean, so much of what we see in 10th grade is a result of some of the things that happen in 9th grade, so we're not too sure how the exam's going to break down. We're not just throwing the 9th grade curriculum by the wayside by any means, but one of the changes in the way we teach the curriculum has been this inquiry design model, where, like I said, we kind of try and get the students to form their own opinions by looking at original historical documents and sort of putting evidence in front of them and having them sort of dig into it, dive into it as almost a history detective. You know, what can you tell me about this piece? When was it written? Why is it important where this took place? You know, and kind of link the pieces together. And then at the end, a productive, more productive conversation, I think, rather than just one side of the teacher. Here's what happened, in Europe during the Middle Ages. So there's been a change in two fronts, I think, in the global curriculum: how we teach it and what the students will be expected to know at the end of 10th grade.
And this started last year?
Well, the model was put out 3 years ago, and they've sort of kicked the dates back a little bit. There was, I think, some pushback from social studies teachers statewide about some of the changes being made. So they slowed, they hit the brakes a little bit. They slowed down, which, to their credit, is the right thing to do.
Sure.
And so now we're in this transition period before the real rollout happens next year in global studies. But they're going to continue to offer this transition exam this year. And next year as well, and I think through 2020, and then it'll all be the new exam. So we're in a good place. We feel like we kind of know what's coming for the most part. We just haven't seen a finished product yet from the state. So.
And like in language arts, you embrace the change, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. We're excited about it. So far we've enjoyed the changes.
Okay, thanks for.
Sure. Thanks for the question.
So I know I said this last time we met about the elementary teacher leaders, but couple things that shouldn't go unmentioned. Thank you to the board for the infrastructure to allow this work to be done and the funding. Dr. Schoenfeld's leadership in coordinating this work. And of course our teacher leaders who, when you hear them speak, obviously their knowledge base and passion comes through, but also keep in mind this is not their full-time job. They are teaching full-time in addition to leading these initiatives. And without their leadership, we would not be in the position that we are relative to the curriculum alignment, data analysis, and assessment development. So thank you. Nice work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, number 2 is actually a topic for the board to talk about as a follow-up to our retreat, the goals for the 17-18 school year.
I had sent you guys out a draft copy of something I just put together from our retreat. I apologize, I had copies to print for everyone and left them on my desk at my office. Yeah, I have mine here. So, we had talked about having 4 main goals, one being a budget and finance goal, one being an advocacy goal, a board efficacy goal, and a board professional development. So I had thrown some ideas out, kind of some carryover from last year, but added some things for everyone to look at. What we need to do is put some timelines to some of this. If you have things you'd like to add, that'd be great. I mean, this is just a working draft right now. I think the easiest one probably is our board self-evaluation tool in terms of, we're going to do that. We just got to figure out what we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. I initially put down Mrs. Goldhawk
I noticed that.
and somebody to find/create the tool, but
I think we found it. Hey, look, I found it.
Oh, you're fast.
so, but with advocacy, that's ever changing. I threw some things in there. Feel free to, we can have discussion if you'd like to add some things, if you think things are important. One of the things I added was there is a fall legislative forum next week that that Erie County School Boards is putting on. So Jean is actually going to attend for us. It's usually either a superintendent or the assistant superintendent and the board president, vice president, or somebody from the legislative team. So they look for 2 people to attend. So, so I added that in there.
Do you want to just go through them like one by one? Are we working on them now, or are we sending you stuff? What do you want to do?
Wants to work on some of it. We have
Yeah,
time to.
might as well generate the list and we can put it together and push it back out.
So, in terms of finance,
Under the activities, we have a finance committee, right? Budget
Audit
committee? Audit.
we have an audit committee.
Okay. So that's.
The audit committee doesn't deal with the budget
Right.
per se.
Does there need to be anything in here about the tax tertiary stuff?
I don't think so. I don't think that's,
Fiscal oversight, is that? Although with the fiscal oversight, is it strictly just budget related, or are we talking everything? Because then,
or our finance, what we have control, I think to judge us is, putting forth a budget that is balanced and fiscally responsible, so. I mean, these are board goals, obviously not district
Right.
goals, so.
should the last bullet then be something about, getting feedback on the budget at public meetings and having a vote on the budget? Public vote, I don't know, I was looking at some of the examples you gave us at the retreat last week. Just trying to come up with additional things down there.
Yeah, no, I feel like there needs to be more things that we can actually do and accomplish and are measurable. And to her point, those are the things we do. Like, I feel like, having a balanced budget, Tony needs to be on there because, we're not actually creating a budget.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it doesn't feel like that's our goal. Our goal is to provide oversight and hire great people like Tony to make that happen. Mr. Pinella, sorry. Yes. So I feel like that, it needs to reflect what our actual
Yeah, so,
To-do list
it makes
is-
sense evaluating the financials, reviewing and understanding the use of reserves, evaluating any reductions, monitoring and closing the budget gap, obtaining budget feedback at public meetings. Those are all things that are in our purview, like you're saying.
You have things you want to add to this then?
Just that. That's
just
it.
the one about the
Your thoughts are
obtaining
covered
feedback
by
at public
all that.
meetings.
You cover a lot of ground, I think it covers most of it.
Yeah.
There's one piece that you're required to comply with, but it's worth noting that tax cap compliance. You don't have, you can try to exceed it if you wanted to, but it might be to
We
have a
do
goal to
actually
be.
make that decision,
Yeah,
shortly
it's time
before I don't know exactly what the timing was last year. Is
Yeah,
it
by the end of
March?
February,
Is it February?
yeah.
Yeah, we have a date, don't we? A drop dead date where we have to tell the state what we're gonna try and do.
Right.
It's just around March 1st, so we typically ask for your commitment on the second meeting in February. But it's a good action step.
I liked one of the examples you gave us, the goal itself. What we have here, create, obtain, vote, or approval, implement a district financial plan. It was expanded in the example you gave us to say that upholds the mission values of Amherst Central and improves the financial efficiency and maximizes student learning opportunities. Like, it was just kind of an expanded, I can give this to you, so you don't have to write it all, but I just like the way, it really focused.
Sure, we can wordsmith it, that's fine. This is just, this is from last year,
Yeah,
what we had.
yeah, no.
I think when we had
Those are
our
great places
discussions
to
last
start.
year
Yeah.
on our goals, for those who weren't here, is, Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had decided a finance goal was something we should always have, we should
Yeah.
always be looking at as a board, so.
That's all I had. Is there anything else?
The second one was advocacy, which we've been more and more involved in. So I had thrown I tried to put a few of the the suggestions you had in there today, but I'm sure there's stuff I didn't capture. Working with these Erie County school boards now, that with Dr. Frazier taking a stronger advocacy
Yeah.
push.
For sure.
I
I think those 2 bullets, there's 3 bullets up under the goal piece. I think those bottom 2 should be under activities. understanding legislation and working with E ECASB are activities more than part of the goal statement. Right?
Say that again, which part?
The last two bullets I added,
I'm just looking
Up
at
under the
mine.
top part,
so I had added, understand legislation being considered and how it impacts school funding, work with ECASB.
so I thought those would be further down under the activities rather than up under the goal part.
Well, for example, with ECSAB, I mean, going to this legislative forum, or you, Paul and Jean are on the legislative team, for example, with ECSAB. So those would be, I think, activities, going to some functions, that, working with them, but
I think it's a pretty major heading though, to figure out what exactly, you know, is happening to us and what we should be doing to, you know, I mean, because, you know, some of the stuff that's coming down, we're toast. I'm serious, I mean, it's not good. And we need to, you know, start figuring out what's coming and get, you know, mobilize our constituents to write letters and
Yeah.
say, no, you cannot take away our funding, you know? So I think it starts with, though, I forget how the wording was, that she said you have to be you have to get to the right person at the right time, who's on the right committee,
Yeah.
you know. It's like, you know, striking lightning to try and get the exact situation where you can actually have change, but we can, but you know, I think it's a big job to try and figure out how we do that and which things to target, because we can't do it all.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, like Paul said, working with ECRSB, you know, should help. And Dr. Fraser said that he is more than willing to come to boards and talk about those things. That's something we wanted to invite him to.
that could be a
Yeah,
board
the people
activity
from
too. We
this
could
picture
invite,
come too.
for example, Dr. Frazier to attend a board meeting to give us an update on advocacy, you know, what the E ECSAB is doing.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess that I would think is the activity, and the overall understanding piece is more of a goal, like we need to
Yeah,
figure out what,
that makes sense.
you know, I'm sure Tony, Mr. Pinella, sorry, I keep doing that, understands a lot of it because it's impacting him
Yeah, there's
every day.
well, there's a lot of things swirling in the political world, and it's both federal and local and state, so, you know, now a lot of it is speculation, but, you know, the thing that I heard, I think the three of us were there at the ECASB dinner when Dr. Frazier introduced himself. You know, I think the focus is they want to shift the burden away from the localities and the towns, and they want the state to, you know, pay their fair share for public education. So the focus is really on foundation aid and providing us with the money that we need in order to balance our budget and keep the programs that we have and the staff that we have. And it's a little bit more complicated now because now we're talking about a formula that not a lot of people understand. So Dr. Fraser is good at pulling out the data and putting together in a presentable way. You know, in the past, the focus was the GEA, the gap elimination adjustment. So that was, you know, easy. Say, get rid of this. This is how much it's costing us. We need to close this gap. Well, once that was gone, the shift is to the foundation aid, and that the real rudimentary level, we're still funded below the 10-11 school year amount that we had. So we haven't caught up to that, and we're not up to the point that we need to be relative to inflation and contract increases, etc. So one of the things I recall was that breakfast that ECASB conducted in January every year, and what they actually had us do, for those of you that attended, was put together our advocacy plan with the tools that they gave us. So that could actually, help focus the goal a little bit, where the goal could be to create an advocacy plan, and then the action steps would be to, utilize the ECASB resources and meetings, create an advocacy subcommittee, but if the goal is to create the plan, then you can put some action steps in place that are needed to create that plan.
Is this still going backwards to when Cuomo was Attorney General and he sued the state for Foundation Aid formula?
Yeah, the campaign for fiscal
And then he
equity.
became governor and then he, whatever.
Right.
When I was on the CASB legislative team member, that was the discussion. And one of my points is that we ought to all be aware of what it is that we're asking for and what we've given up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because in some cases, it may not be a positive, or you don't know that.
Actually,
And you need to be well aware of it before you before you put together a plan of what you're advocating for, is what it is that what are the consequences, or what's the goal of what it is that you're trying to do before.
we talked about Julie Marlette, who's the NISBA, she's their government guru. She's worked in government herself and understands how it all plays out. But she said that in general, the rule of thumb is if your population has grown, and either your poverty or your ENL population has grown, you are deserving of more funding, and that would put us in the sweet spot of that. So,
Still, it ought to be a
but
number
it should
that,
be a number. I agree.
that somebody knows before. And then the other thing is you want to make sure everyone's growing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to just go out with an advocacy plan without, where are we rowing to, if
But the goal could be maybe developing
Yeah.
a plan, and in that development process, some of that I think probably come out.
Yeah, and I think you're
Needs to
right.
be
There's some debate
fleshed out.
about the campaign for fiscal equity.
That's-
There's people that will say that was a promise, and then there's other people that say that was just a recommendation. But Gene, I think, hit the nail on the head. At the real 30,000 feet view, there needs to be equity amongst the foundation aid formula, and there also needs to be some predictability. So from year to year, we're not sitting here, at the 11th hour in April, waiting to see what that number is going to be, and having to make some pretty important decisions based on whether or not we get the aid we need or we don't. There was plenty of times prior to 2010 when the budget wasn't on time from the state. They didn't reach their April 1st deadline, but school districts were able to adopt their budget. And then once they found out what their foundation aid was, in the summer, and they didn't rely on that number because there was some predictability from previous years to know relatively closely what it was going to be. So I think those are the main things that, I know in the superintendent circles are talked about, is predictability and fairness amongst that foundation aid formula. And those are universal things that I think you would find any public school district advocating for.
There was some suggestion that Cuomo might actually try to get rid of any formula so that nobody can come to him and say you owe us money.
Well, he did last year in the executive proposal. He just took the previous year's amount and added a percentage. I think it ended up being 2%. You might recall. I think it was 2%. I think he just added to everybody's previous year's amount, and that was what was in the executive proposal. And that didn't fly after the legislature met. They ended up changing it, but there is some hope. If I were to put a silver lining on it towards the end here, there's some hope about historically years preceding a gubernatorial election are generally pretty kind relative to aid and funding. But that's where I think the federal level impact may come in, and that's where there's still some uncertainty about some of the things that are being talked about at that level.
Well, for advocacy, then why don't we can add in there, I can distribute a revised kind of draft. We can work with creating an advocacy plan, things like the Dr. Fraser invite, and clean that up a little bit.
Sure. That sounds good.
I think, like what Mr. Cannella said, having the goal be creating an advocacy plan, and then all those activities
Right.
under it.
Would come under it, yeah.
And then really for board professional development, I don't think that, unless somebody's got some suggestions, it's just having us participate in activities to grow and develop professionally as a board. Determine those opportunities, distribute them.
Yeah, I thought we should determine a budget for board PD. Or is there a budget?
What money do we spend other than?
We do have a board budget, I
I mean,
believe.
I'm sure, it costs
I don't
something
know what it is
for
off the top of my head,
Gene
but
to go to that.
Gene's
I mean,
trip about.
Yeah.
we should know what our budget is.
yeah,
There is one.
there's
I
a
don't know what it
budget.
is, but
Could you let us know, let me know what the board budget is, and I can distribute that to everyone?
Yep. And then I thought adding a bullet about having board members report out on learning for the good of the group then.
A lot of the stuff locally that would, we could do is really more of a dinner, or smaller charges here or there, I think.
Oh, for sure.
So it's not,
Budget-wise, you're talking?
yeah, budget-wise, it's not anything
Did you hear
that,
my other bullet to add?
I'm sorry, what is your other bullet?
Having board members report out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That would be the success indicator,
Yeah,
is having board members report out.
well, it would be an activity, right? I don't know how you, wherever.
I'll fill this out more, and then like some of that stuff, but that would be the success is having board members definitely report out on things they do. That's what we did last year.
Okay.
All right, I'll clean things up a little bit, send them back out. Does anyone want to work with Mrs. Goldhawk on our board self-evaluation?
I found one.
Great.
We found
Yeah.
one.
That's why I want to do it.
success.
So there is a newer version of that, I believe, and because of some previous conversations we had relative to the board retreat, Mrs. Custodi has already converted it to a Google form.
Sweet.
So
Look
Keep that-
how far we are now.
keep that in mind if you're interested in a digital format and gathering the data that way. There's already been some legwork done.
All right.
Mrs.
Okay.
Custodi is always way ahead of herself.
So, next week is Board Recognition Week. So it's a NYSBA designation. October 23rd to the 27th is Board Recognition Week. And, it's a time for us to promote the awareness and understanding of all the wonderful work you do on behalf of our students and our schools. Next week, there'll be several items of recognition through social media, the media, signage throughout our schools and on our marquees. Tonight, I just wanted to say thank you. There's a small token of my appreciation for all that you do. That was at your place, your placement there, and
Thank you.
you're welcome. And then if Dr. Schoenfeld, if you could hit the lights, I just have a quick piece here that not all the lights, Doc. Thanks. Getting too close to Halloween.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Next week is School Board Recognition Week. Here in Amherst, we will join other districts across New York State in recognizing the important work done by school board members. We are thankful to have 7 women and men dedicated to this community and our students. Thank you for all you do. I hope you enjoyed this short video as a token of our appreciation.
They're old people.
I don't know. Something that helps children realize and helps people go anywhere they would like to. It's a board of learning. Moral learning. Fire planning.
The primary function of the school board is to establish policies by which the schools are to be administered. They devote time, thought, and study to render effective and informed decisions. They regularly attend board meetings and take action after careful study of the issues facing the board and after full discussion at meetings. They serve our community with a spirit of teamwork and devotion to public education. They are role models to our students and to us.
A best friend. It's a bigger person that's supposed to do something right for another kid to do. It's somebody who shows the other person what to do. Somebody who is an example to other people. There's someone walked on the red carpet and they look good and they show off their moves. Our Chromebooks rock! Thank you, Board of Education. We love learning. Thank you, Board of Education.
Technology rocks! Thanks for letting us have state-of-the-art technology equipment. Board of Education, you rock! Thank you for all the opportunities you give us. Our music program rocks! Thank you, Board of Education, from some future rock stars.
Just like Mount Rushmore, you represent the rich heritage of our school district. President Paul Steinle, Vice President Jean Ernst, Trustees Mark Smith, Jessica McLaughlin, Lori Goldhawk, Paul Bott, and Dominic Vivolo. Thank you for all you do.
I know, and it's really big.
Are we gonna put that on the board side?
Thank you.
Pardon?
That's very nice.
Under the board then.
If you'd like.
Send it to share with us.
Sure, absolutely.
That's very nice, Mr. Vanella.
You're welcome. Thank you for all you do. We'll double your salary because you're doing such a great job. So, thank you, all joking aside, for everything that you do for the community. I know it takes a lot of time away from your real jobs and families, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Love seeing those babies on the screen.
That's the end of the superintendent's report.
All right. We will need a motion for new business then.
I'll make a motion for new business. Items G1A through L, 2A through E, and 3C and G.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving new business items G1, A through L, 2A through E, and 3C and G, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Eisenhower to our team here at Amherst. We just appointed her tonight, so welcome. We look forward to working with you. we have any follow-up actions other than our board budget?
That Mr. Steinle will distribute a revised draft of the Board of Education goals to all of the Board of Education members. That I will send the Board of Education budget to Mr. Pennella to share with Mr. Steinle and the board. And the last one was that Mr. Pennella will share the Board of Education appreciation video with all of the board members and possibly even put up on the website on the Board of Education.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we will need a motion to convene your executive session.
I'll make a motion to convene to executive session for matters regarding the employment of a particular person.
A second.
Okay, all those in favor of convening to executive session, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks.